Hello YouTube, it is Grim Reaper 1312-666, better known as Nihilus Chrome, here again, and it's been 2 weeks since my last upload. I'm very sorry for that, but I was out looking for a place to live, because I'm moving out of my parents' home. And yeah, studying stuff, you know, the normal drill life and stuff. But I'm back, and this is the Monday upload. At Sugarcube Corner, you know the drill, chapter 8 is up. The story's coming to a close, and I hope you like it still. So let's continue. I stood watch at the door of an unpleasant room. It had taken me the better of an hour to find a bed I was willing to let my friend lay on, but in the end my search was rewarded. It was dusty but serviceable, and Fluttershy needed a rest after what she'd been through. The ambient light seemed brighter than before. Maybe it meant some kind of day was dawning outside, wherever or whatever the outside was. Regardless of the reason, I didn't need a light spell anymore, which was good because my headache was becoming unbearable. After a little while longer, I stepped back into the room and crawled carefully into the bed next to Fluttershy. I had done my best to help her. What little healing magics I knew had been applied, and at least her wings were still intact. I'd mended some cracked ribs and regrew some of her more important feathers, but part of her power from the spell of healing comes from the wounded, and I didn't want to tax her any more than was needed. I knew I should be out looking for Rarity and Applejack, but I was so exhausted from rescuing Fluttershy, I knew I wouldn't be any good unless I got at least a little rest. I laid my head down and tried to relax, letting the worst of the pain fall away into a dull ache.
Princess, why can't I use that spell?
I started, staring around the room, looking for the source of the voice. It was the voice of that filly again. It was soft and almost impossible to detect, but it was there, fading in and out like an old record.
Would you trust me?
Who's there? I whisper. Why can't I see you? Why can I only hear you? Suddenly a thunderclap split the silence. I nearly leapt out of bed. Fluttershy squeaked as her eyes shot open, shocked into wakefulness by the noise. I put my arm over her as she shook. There, it's okay, I'm here. And you're safe, it's just lightning. Which it was. I recognized the sound the instant after I heard it. A literal thunderclap. I decided it must be storming outside. To the twilight, Bobo! She gulped as she met my tired gaze. I knew what her question was going to be. Yeah, it was real. At least it was as real as anything in whatever this place is, I answered. Tears started pouring down her face as she was wrecked with sobs. I'm sorry. I should have said something. I was just so scared and ashamed. I felt like it was all my fault. I pulled her close. I know, Shy, I know. The storm raged outside for a while, as we sat there sharing the tears we needed to let out. After a few moments, Fluttershy looked up, wincing as she did so. When I found out what happened to Dash, what happened with Pinky, I knew right away, she confessed. I knew that what happened to Rainbow Dash, Pinky had originally intended for me. I had nothing to say, that kind of burden. Even though I was the one who found them, I couldn't even imagine what it must have felt like to think that was almost me. Fluttershy, we need to get moving. We need to find Rarity and Applejack. If they were trapped like you were... Fluttershy nodded. I'll try to keep up. Twilight? Yes? When everything went dark and we were all taken, did you, see anything? She asked hesitantly. I shook my head. No, everything went completely black for me. I could hear things. I heard Rarity and Applejack scream. I heard you pleading. Fluttershy nodded again. I heard them too, but... What is it, Fluttershy? Well, what happened to Luna? I didn't hear her or see her after the darkness came. I stopped and fought back for a second before realizing she was right. The only sounds I heard came from the other ponies. Princess Luna was silent. I didn't like where my thoughts were headed. Well, maybe she was taken first, or maybe something happened to her. Fluttershy just looked down. I didn't really have time to think about it until now, but do you think... I shook my head. Luna would never hurt us. We rescued her from evil when we banished Nightmare Moon with the elements of harmony. Fluttershy only answered with 2 words. Did we? I didn't want to admit that thought had crossed my mind, that maybe, just maybe, the tyrannical Nightmare Moon was still present in the princess' mind. Fluttershy, I don't know if Luna or Nightmare Moon had a hoof in this, but I can't imagine Celestia wouldn't have noticed that Nightmare Moon wasn't gone completely. I answered, unwilling to think that my mentor and our princess had missed something like that. Fluttershy gave me a small, hopeful smile. Yeah, you're right. Now, I stood up with vigor I didn't really feel. Let's find our friends and get out of here. We walked for what seemed like another 4 hour or so before finding a set of stairs going down. We followed the hallway it ended at for a while longer after that. Neither of us felt like talking. Something about the place we were in discouraged sound. It was a dark and oppressive atmosphere. Everything from the off-grape pseudo-illumination to the peeling wallpaper, the rotting floorboards and rusty or stained lamp sconces gave off a feeling of desolation. It was as if this place somehow inimical to life, like it denied everything a pony was supposed to be. Where there should have been laughter, there was grim silence. Where care and love should be, there was only decay and neglect. Finally, after an hour of painful silence, we came to what was obviously a foyer of some time. I peered about, trying to get a feel for the layout. My breath caught in my throat like a stone. I knew this place. It wasn't just eerily familiar. I knew it! I mean, how could I not? I'd all but grown up here. No. This can't be right, I whispered, mostly to myself. Twilight? What's wrong? I broke into a staggering run towards where I knew the main entrance would be. The doors were closed, but they were rotted and barely hanging on their once solid iron hinges. A sudden burst of telekinetic force was enough to shatter a hole through it. I hadn't even slowed down. As soon as I was out, I whipped around and stared upward, dreading and knowing full well what I would see. Fluttershy came out in some sort of limping trot. Twilight? What was that? What's wrong? Her question died in her throat as she followed my gaze upward. Oh, was all she said. Oh. I stared up at the ruined majesty of Canterlot Castle, my childhood home, since I was young filly under the wing of the princess. Even in its dilapidated state, it was impressive, still standing despite whatever terrible neglect it had suffered. I felt tears form in my eyes to match the raindrops that were falling in the storm. I hadn't wanted to see this. This was wrong. This was so very, very wrong. Small wonder why every room I went seemed strangely familiar. Then that first room, the one I wake up in, was that— Twilight, look! Interrupted from my train of thought, I turned to see Fluttershy pointing down into the courtyard. There were many statues there, each representing something important, an event or belief held sacred by ponykind. There was a new one now, though. It was a sculpture of a Pegasus in the midst of taking flight from the ground, ascending into the sky with a look of familiar pride and defiance on her face. It was how we all remembered Rainbow Dash, how she should be remembered. Fluttershy, though, was pointing to something else, more specifically to some pony else. At the base of the statue was an orange cream-colored pony, her blonde locks falling over her face, and her old worn Stetson held off her head against her chest out of respect for the dead. "Applejack!" we both cried out as we rushed down the broken stairs to the courtyard. She barely moved, looking up just as we blinked slowly. Her eyes were red from crying, and her face seemed drawn and weak, a shadow of the strong and vital pony we all knew. "Oh, hey, Arapony. Sorry, I'm just, paying my respects that—" She choked for a few seconds as though tears were about to overwhelm her again. "To Dash's monument and all." She looked back up at it and sniffed a little. "Awful nice, ain't it?" Fluttershy and I both looked at each other sadly. "Yeah, Applejack, it's beautiful," I replied. She wasn't here. Not really. Her mind was off somewhere else, lost in happier times, probably. Applejack, Fluttershy broke in after a few minutes of awkward silence. It seemed like Appledash. Yeah, Appledash. It seemed like Applejack had forgotten we were there since she started a little before turning back to us. What happened to you after the darkness swept in? Applejack shuddered a little before looking back up at the statue. I don't really want to talk about that, she answered quietly. Well, it's just that, I woke up in some danger. Did you? Fluttershy asked softly, trying to pull her attention back. Nah, I woke up right here, right at the foot of the statue here, she answered dismally. Had myself a right good cry when I saw it. She drifted away again, her attention caught up with the statue. It was then that I noticed something at her feet. The rain intensified, coming down a bit harder than before. It was a length of rope. Hey, Applejack, are you okay? She scoffed. Sure, I'm just dandy, she answered in a dark voice. Well, 'twas my fault, you know, she said, cutting me off. What was? I asked, already fairly certain of the answer. Dashy, 'twas my fault when she the way she did. I shook my head. Applejack, why would you say that? She came to me, okay? Applejack snapped harshly, her eyes red with grief-filled rage. What do you mean? I asked her. Fluttershy had backpedaled at her sudden ferocity. Her, Pinky, she came by while I was working. She said she couldn't find Dashy and wondered if I knew where she'd gone off to. The blood drained from my face as I realized what she meant. So, you told her? I asked. New tears started coming down. Yeah, that's right. I didn't have no reason to think nothing of it. It was just Pinkie Pie looking for Dashy. So I told her. She said she was gonna be off in the far mills practicing a new trick. She looked absolutely miserable. And then she thanked me and went about bouncing away like she always did. These last few words came through a choking rain of tears. Dashy was supposed to come around for supper that night. Never made it. Figured she and Pinky had been out, pranking ponies again, so I didn't think nothing of it. She turned back to the statue and stared at it as she finished. I told her the evil murdering pony where my best friend was, and now... Applejack, that wasn't your fault. Fluttershy spoke up before I could. Yeah, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, she wasn't exactly supple. Pinkie Pie would have... I started before she cut me off again. You shut your traps, she shouted. I sold out my best friend to a killer, and now I gotta pay for it. In a flash of her legs snapped out and kicked my legs out from under me. My head slammed into the ground, multiplying the headache I already had. I caught a glimpse of a rope fly up and wrap securely around the statue's neckline. A lightning bolt crossed the sky at that moment, illuminating the horror I was witnessing, and making it seem surreal in the painful haze of my consciousness. Applejack, don't you dare! I heard Fluttershy scream. I never heard that angry before, even at that gala when she was filled with frustration, or when the dragon was nearly on top of us. I heard another impact as I tried to get up. My head was spinning from the pain. I saw Fluttershy hit the ground. I looked up as a wave of vertigo. My legs dropped out of me from under me again. Why did it hurt so bad? Why couldn't I concentrate? I went down. My gaze went up. I saw Applejack had already woven the noose. It was tied and secure around her own neck. Her tear-stained face was set in a hard line. Her eyes were red and gleamed with a grim light. I turned my head to see Fluttershy trying her best to get up, making to her feet only stagger backward out my sight as she steadied herself. Her wings were still in tatters, so flying just wasn't an option. I mustered a telekinesis spell and shot it out with all my might, but I barely made a crack on the solid statue. The effort nearly blinded me. I saw a blur as another lightning bolt snapped a thunderclap across my ears, followed immediately by the sound of another snap of a rope going taut and an ear-splitting crack. So guys, this was chapter 8 of at Sugarcube Corner. I Hope you like it. All you Applejack fans out there, I'm very, very sorry. This is how the story goes. It's not written by me, so don't complain. At least, not with me. So, see you in the next part.